Good evening. Can I see your papers? Thank you, everything looks good. Have a safe drive.
Level 1, a broken taillight. You are 22 years old and you are driving home a little after midnight with an expired tag you kept meaning to renew. A patrol officer named Danny Osei is 3 hours into a shift that has mostly been quiet, and he clocks your taillight before he clocks anything else about you. He runs your plate before he's even fully stopped behind you, a habit so automatic he barely registers doing it. The system returns nothing alarming. No warrants, no flags, just a name and an address that match what's on your registration. He walks up, flashlight low so it doesn't blind you, and tells you the light's out and the registration's expired. Here's a fix-it ticket. Get it sorted in 30 days. That's the whole interaction. 90 seconds, a scribbled ticket, taillights disappearing down the block. That's the lesson of level 1 that nobody tells you. The department's smallest attention is still attention. A plate run takes 4 seconds and costs you almost nothing to notice and almost everything to ignore, because the record of that stop doesn't disappear. It sits in a database, waiting to become the first line in a file nobody has opened yet. Level 2, a pattern of small theft. You are 25. What started as one shoplifted jacket becomes a rhythm. 3 stores in 2 months. Always small enough that loss prevention writes it off as a cost of doing business rather than calling it in. You tell yourself nobody's tracking receipts that don't exist, that a missing jacket is just inventory shrinkage, a number that gets absorbed into a spreadsheet somewhere and forgotten. This time, the file doesn't close after 1 stop. A detective named Priya Nair in the Property Crimes Unit starts noticing your face across 3 separate store submissions, not because anyone flagged you specifically, but because she reviews surveillance stills from every reported theft in her district every Friday afternoon, a habit that turns 3 unconnected reports into one obvious pattern. She builds a photo lineup from stills that were never meant to identify anyone specifically, cross-references them against a database of prior stops, and finds your name sitting exactly where Officer Osei's taillight stop left it 2 years earlier. The pattern gives you away before any single theft does. She tells a colleague, laying 3 photos side by side on her desk. You are not arrested that week. You are added to a watch list circulated to loss prevention teams across the district. Your name now attached to a file that grows a little heavier every time it's touched. Level 3, a burglary. You are 28. 15 minutes inside a house that felt empty because the car wasn't in the driveway. Out through a side window with a laptop and a jewelry box that turns out to hold more sentimental value than resale value. This is not property crimes anymore. A detective named Marcus Wexler catches the case and the difference shows up within the hour. He dusts the window frame for prints, photographs the shoe impression left in a flower bed you didn't notice crossing, and pulls doorbell footage from 2 houses down that catches nothing of your face but plenty of your gait and the specific way you favor your left shoulder carrying weight. Within 2 days, a print from the window frame matches a set on file from a stop that never led anywhere 5 years earlier. Detective Wexler doesn't kick your door down that afternoon. He builds the file first, cross-referencing the print, the footage, and a pawn shop database that flags a laptop matching the stolen serial number sold 2 towns over. We don't move on a partial match, he tells a rookie shadowing him. We move on a case that survives a defense attorney reading it line by line. You are arrested 6 days later at your own front door, holding a case that was never really about catching you in the act. It was about building something that would hold once it got to a courtroom. Level 4, local drug distribution. You are 31. What began as splitting product with 2 friends to cover your own habit becomes a route, 6 regular customers, a supply line you didn't build but inherited when the person before you got tired of the risk. You tell yourself this is small, local, beneath anyone's real attention, that 6 customers barely register next to whatever the department considers a real case. This comfort doesn't survive contact with how a narcotics unit actually works. A sergeant named Elaine Brooks runs a small team that spends weeks on surveillance before a single arrest happens anywhere near you. They watch the house. They log every vehicle that stops for under 10 minutes, a pattern that reads as unmistakably as a neon sign to anyone who's done this work for more than a year. They use a confidential informant to make 1 controlled buy, then 2, each one building probable cause for a warrant rather than an arrest. The buy isn't the case, Sergeant Brooks tells her team during a briefing. The buy is what gets us the warrant for the case. When the warrant executes, it's not a knock at your door at an inconvenient hour. It's 6 officers arriving with paperwork that already accounts for every question a judge might ask later. Built over 3 weeks of watching a pattern you didn't know you were making obvious. Level 5 Armed Robbery. You are 34. 8 minutes inside a convenience store. A gun you told yourself you'd never actually use. For $100 from a register that felt like more counting it in the car than it did sitting in the drawer. This draws a full detective response within the hour, not a patrol follow-up. A detective named Roberto Castillo arrives before the responding officers have finished taping off the scene. He reviews the store's camera system frame by frame, not for your face behind the mask, but for the tattoo on your forearm that shows for half a second reaching across the counter. Within a day, that half second is run against a regional database of known tattoo descriptions tied to prior arrests. A system most people don't know exists until it produces their name. A patrol unit spots your car 2 days later on an unrelated stop, and the plate pings a flag Detective Castillo added the night of the robbery. You are not caught planning your next move. You are caught doing something completely unrelated, because the file built around you was already wide enough to catch you doing almost anything. That's usually how it goes, Detective Castillo tells you afterward, not unkindly. We don't always catch the crime. Sometimes we just catch you. Level 6 An Organized Theft Ring. You are 37. What started as one person fencing stolen electronics has grown into a loose network. 5 people moving goods through 2 pawn shops that ask fewer questions than they should. You tell yourself your role is small. A driver who never touches the merchandise directly. A name that wouldn't appear anywhere near the center of whatever chart the department might eventually draw. This comfort does not survive how a coordinated investigation actually works. A detective sergeant named Carla Jimenez builds a task force that pulls in officers from 2 neighboring precincts, something no single burglary case ever required. She maps the network the way Detective Wexler once mapped a single house, except now the map has 5 names instead of 1, 3 pawn shops, and a financial trail that shows the same amounts moving through the same accounts every 10 to 14 days. The mapping takes 6 weeks, most of it unglamorous, subpoenaing pawn shop records, cross-referencing serial numbers against burglary reports filed across 3 precincts that never used to talk to each other. We don't take down a ring by grabbing the first name we recognize, Sergeant Jimenez tells her team. We take it down by understanding the whole shape of it first. The raids happen on the same morning, 5 addresses, 5 simultaneous knocks, timed so no one has the chance to call ahead and warn anyone else. Level 7 A Fraud and Identity Theft Operation. You are 40. Stolen mail, open credit lines, a scheme that's grown efficient enough that you've stopped thinking of the names on the documents as people. This draws a financial crimes detective, a specialist rather than a generalist. A detective named Aiden Park works cases that don't announce themselves with a broken window or a missing register drawer. Cases that instead show up as a slow accumulation of victim complaints filed weeks apart by people who don't realize they've been targeted by the same person. He builds a timeline the way a financial analyst would, cross-referencing addresses on fraudulent applications against a stolen mail route that repeats across 4 separate victim complaints. The pattern is the crime scene, he tells a colleague reviewing the spreadsheet with him. There's no broken window here, just paper that keeps pointing the same direction. It takes his unit 2 months to connect 11 separate victim complaints into one case with your name at the center of it. A timeline built entirely from documents rather than a single piece of physical evidence. You are arrested not because anyone caught you in the act, but because the paper trail eventually became too specific to belong to anyone but you. Level 8 A Pattern of Violent Crime Across Precincts. You are 43. A string of incidents spread across 3 separate precincts that each looked, on its own, like an isolated case, until someone finally noticed they weren't. A crime analyst named Dr. Renata Osei, attached to a regional unit that specifically looks for patterns crossing jurisdictional lines, is the one who first spots the connection, a detail in how each scene was left that individual detectives working their own precincts had no reason to compare against each other. Her report circulates quietly, then urgently once a 4th incident confirms what the first 3 suggested. A joint task force forms, coordinated by a detective named Julian Ferreira, who spends months working alongside Dr. Osei, narrowing a search area that started as 3 precincts and ends as 4 square blocks. The pattern doesn't lie, Dr. Osei tells the assembled task force. Even across months and different neighborhoods, people repeat themselves. It's the most consistent thing about anyone. Evidence reprocessed with updated techniques eventually produces a match connecting you to all 4 scenes. A backlog finally catching up to a case that had been waiting for the technology to arrive. Level 9. A multi-jurisdiction crime spree. You are 47. What's escalated into a string of crimes across county lines, moving fast enough that no single department can build a complete picture from their piece of it alone. This requires something beyond one detective bureau's usual reach. A regional task force commander named Patricia Reyes coordinates a response that pulls in 4 different agencies, each with their own systems, their own case numbers, their own version of a partial file. Commander Reyes spends weeks just getting the departments to share data in a format that lines up. A problem that sounds bureaucratic until you understand it's the difference between 4 fragments and 1 complete case. A single department moves at the speed of its own paperwork, she tells a colleague on a call that spans 3 jurisdictions. 4 departments move at the speed of the slowest one's paperwork, unless someone forces them to move together. Once the data finally aligns, the picture that emerges is unmistakable, the same person, the same pattern, for counties that had each been chasing a quarter of the same case without knowing it. Arrests happen the same morning across 2 counties. A coordination that took weeks to arrange and less than an hour to execute. Level 10. A barricaded suspect and a coordinated manhunt. You are 51. A confrontation that spiraled into a standoff. A house surrounded. A situation that draws a response unlike anything the previous 9 levels prepared you to imagine. This is no longer a detective's case or even a task force's case. A SWAT commander named Elena Marchetti activates a response within minutes, pulling together tactical officers, a crisis negotiator, and coordination with 2 neighboring precincts that can seal off surrounding streets before most residents even realize anything is happening. Everything that would normally take days of planning happens in minutes here, Commander Marchetti tells her team as the perimeter goes up, because the cost of being slow is measured differently in a moment like this than anywhere else in this work. A negotiator works the phone for hours, buying time while tactical officers hold position, while an analyst pulls your full history in real time, every prior stop, every prior file, assembled instantly instead of over years, because a computer can do in seconds what once took Detective Wexler weeks to build by hand. The standoff ends without anyone hurt, hours after it began. An outcome that looks calm from the outside and represents, underneath that calm, the entire architecture of everything that came before compressed into its most urgent form. 10 levels. 10 different sizes of the same basic structure. A patrol stop and a SWAT perimeter are not different systems. They are the same system, scaled to match whatever it's asked to handle. Local police don't hunt you the way one person hunts. They hunt you the way a structure hunts, patiently, in parallel, one small file feeding the next until the picture is complete enough that the final step, the knock on the door, is almost an afterthought compared to everything that quietly built toward it. If this changed how you see what happens after the taillight, before the headline, share it. Subscribe if you're new here. Every week, this channel goes somewhere most people only ever imagine from the outside.